native. And again, the Irish that settled the western part of Nebraska, as well as the Scots, shared information with the Native Americans and vice versa. They had a good working relationship when it came to medicine because your ancestors took all of these plants seriously. Unlike us today, they respected the natural world that they lived in. And this plant, echinacea, you can see the little cone flower. This is Rudbeckia. Now, Rudbeckia is that little brown-eyed Susan, brown-eyed Daisy, has the same impact that echinacea has. Echinacea will boost your immune system. We all know this, right? And a matter of fact, it will boost it so much that those people with AIDS absolutely should not take echinacea. If there's any proof in the pudding that it works, that should tell you. People cannot use echinacea if they have AIDS or an autoimmune system disease. Why is that? Why wouldn't you want to take this plant if you have AIDS? Do you know what AIDS does?
Does it attack your own?
That's right. You don't want to boost your immune system if you have AIDS because you'll speed up the process. But if you have a cold, you feel yourself coming down with something, this is another defense compound. Do you remember what we called it? Defense compound. It's fighting against disease. So echinacea is a North American native that your ancestors gladly used. Brown-eyed Susan, black-eyed Susan, they're all kinds of common names. Coneflower. This plant was one of the Native American plants that our ancestors used. Now, what you guys may have been wondering about was this little fella here. It's a squash. It's a North American squash. Well, back in the day when our Scottish and Irish ancestors came over, they celebrated around the same time as actually most people across the world. I went to Japan, I went to China, and found out that around late October, early September, every country in the world observed a Day of their ancestors. Now, it has a lot of names. All Saints' Day, it has Halloween, All Hallows' Eve. Well, I found the same observance in Japan. I found the same one in China, so there must be something to it. If the Orients had something that they'd been practicing for 5,000 years. Well, it seems that our Irish ancestors during that time of year would take a potato, a good old-fashioned Irish potato, and they would carve it and they would put it up as a lantern. Well, everyone knows that potatoes make good lanterns, right? So this was something they did in Ireland. Well, when they got here, they looked at their potato and then they looked at those big pumpkins and squashes and said, hey, I got a better lantern. I'm going to carve out a face. And so the legend of Halloween began. We had pumpkins that were carved out. And that's how the Americans changed that holiday. Like most holidays, the Americans living here made a new one. And they gave out candy because they were like, oh, those little hooligans and demons. If I give them candy, they're not going to bother me. And so we started our own tradition, and that's when we started taking squashes, namely pumpkins, every Halloween and carving them out. Now, what about May Day? Well, May Day for Americans that lived here was something totally different than May Day that was practiced hundreds of years ago. Now, I understand they call it Beltane or something like that, and they'd have these really wild parties and bonfires and this kind of thing. Well, I can tell you what May Day was here. My family were Christians, but they were still Irish, they were still Scottish. So they observed May Day. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I asked Marcy, I said, so are you going to observe May Day? And she goes, oh, no, I'm Roman Catholic. We don't do that. I said, oh, okay. And I'm like, I'm Christian. What's she talking about? So, and she was thinking in terms of the old way, and I'm sitting there thinking in terms of the way my ancestors have been doing it here in America. On May Day, you give a May basket full of flowers or food to shut-ins, to people who are sick. Or, if you're like me and you know of a few plants that might help them out, you put it in the May basket. And so I gave my little May basket to Ruth Fraser because she's one of our Scottish Society ladies whose husband is in a hospice. And she knew immediately what the May basket was. So our traditions and customs have changed. But that doesn't mean we have to forget who we are, what we are, and where we come from. And these plants, clover, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, dandelion, peppermint, St. John's wort, our weedy little Prunus vulgaris, heal all, self-help, clover, all of these, lemon balm, all of these are our heritage. So I implore you, keep a few of those weeds around. Put them in your salad, use them for dinner, and live a little longer, live a little healthier. Thank you.